What exactly distinguishes a rich person from a poor one? Why is it that poor individuals die indebted and in poverty, whilst the rich get richer and leave behind means of financial support for their offspring? How does one get started on a path to a prosperous life? Book summary of Robert Kiyosaki's all-time classic, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Subscribe to join the top YouTube community dedicated to instructive books. With each video, you save at least 1 week worth of your time.
Let's be frank with each other. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the middle class never get out of debt. Robert Kiyosaki asserts that this situation is a direct result of a failure in education. He notes that we learn about money from our parents and not from school.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad is based on Robert Kiyosaki's own childhood experiences. There were two fathers in Robert's life. His own father, who was a highly educated, clever man, and yet continuously struggled with financial difficulties. And his best friend's father, who dropped out of school at age 13, but became one of the richest men in Hawaii.
As a child, it was incredibly good fortune to have grown up in the context of two dads. Each one of them had their own, diametrically different to one another, view of the world. Most importantly, as a child, Kiyosaki felt the type of impact each mindset had on one's life outcomes. What is it that the rich uniquely teach their children that the poor don't? Both dads were strong individuals, and both worked hard throughout their lives. The key factor differentiating them was their respective view of and relationship to money. For example, one would say, love of money is the root of all evil. The other would say, lack of money is the root of all evil. Of critical importance was how they reacted to different life situations. Kiyosaki's poor dad would say, I can't afford that. His rich dad, on the other hand, forbade the use of that expression. Instead, he advised asking the question, how can I obtain this or that? The phrase expressed by poor dad is a means of justifying inaction, and the brain shuts down in congruence with this. In other words, it provokes laziness. In contrast, the phrase articulated by rich dad forces one to think about how to resolve the issue at hand. There are parallels here to physical exercise. What do you think? Which of the two expressions is likely to lead to the achievement of desirable outcomes? Kiyosaki's poor dad would always say, study more so that you can find a good company to work at. Kiyosaki's rich dad had a different slant on things and would say, study more so that you can find a good company and buy it. His first dad would say, the reason that I am not rich is that I have children. His second dad would say, the reason that I am obliged to become rich is that I have children. Kiyosaki's poor dad would always warn him, with respect to money, only act if you have absolute certainty. Don't take risks. His rich dad, in contrast, would always say, learn how to take calculated risks. Kiyosaki's first dad was convinced that our home is our biggest asset and our largest investment. His second dad, in contrast, would say, my home is a liability, and if your home is your largest investment, then you are in trouble. But the most amazing was that poor dad always said, I will never be rich. And he was right. My rich dad always said, I'm a rich person. He was also right. He was convinced that rich people would never say things like, I'll never be rich. Even when rich dad was bankrupt, he kept on behaving like he was not. He would say, there's a difference between being poor and being broke. Being broke is temporary. Being poor, that's everlasting. In the end, it's quite straightforward, really. Kiyosaki's poor dad was not poor because he earned little, but rather because of his mindset and because of the consequent actions taken and not taken in light of his mindset. We have a tendency to forget the power of our thoughts and our thinking. We need to be more careful with our thought patterns. We need to move forward with well-founded thoughts and to control ourselves.
Enjoy this video? Like it and subscribe to our channel. We'll give you our best and appreciate your feedback.